Hello.
Hit on mute. Are you able to hear me now? Hello, hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Y'all hear me now?
Yes, you're back.
Yes, we do, sir.
Yes.
Oh
Wow.
man.
But we can't see you.
No, I don't think I want y'all to see me. All right. Let me see. Okay. All right. Y'all can hear me? Y'all can see me?
Yes.
All right. Sorry so much, everybody. I don't know what happened. You know, these technical things happen sometimes, but all right. So y'all ready to get with the program?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, cool. So let me get back to my presentation. All right. So, all right. We are back. All right. So let's try this again. How y'all doing, everybody? I was doing all of this talking, and y'all didn't hear anything I was saying, so that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, Frantz, we
No,
have
can we move?
CS9 that's not muted. We have a few folks who are not muted.
Yeah, so everyone who's not muted, please mute yourselves so that we can go ahead and get started with the presentation. My camera is still on. I don't know if I want y'all to see me while I'm doing this. Sometimes I get real animated. So
the camera, yeah, you got it.
yeah, okay. All right, cool. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started real quick so we don't take up too much of anyone else's time. So very quickly, thank you again for hanging in there with me through those technical difficulties. My name is Frantz Derenoncourt Jr. And we doing this Haitian History 101 live. And the reason I'm doing this, especially this episode, this session in particular, is last week, Dave and I did a 5-part series on Haitian history. And unfortunately, I had another technical difficulty last week where I was unable to record the first session from last week, which was where we were talking about the Tainos, the Arawak Kingdom. And so we recorded all the other sessions, and in the chat room, if you go up enough, you could see where I shared the link to the other sessions, because those are important as well. But one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine when people start talking about Haitian history is they start with Christopher Columbus, right? Christopher Columbus came 1492 and discovered Ayiti, right? And founded Hispaniola and all of that. Well, that's a pet peeve of mine because it's not true, right? There were generations of people that were living on this island prior to Columbus getting there, right? There was there were civilizations that were there in Ayiti prior to the arrival of Europeans. So I thought it was very important that we capture that and we learn as much as we can from those people. And what you're gonna find in this presentation is that many of the ways of life that we carry on today, which is part of Haitian culture, comes from the indigenous population, which were the Tainos in Ayiti. So that's, you know, the more you find out about these things is the more you find out about yourself, right? Of course, there's a lot of African influence in Ayiti, but that's not it, right? Ayiti, as in all colonized countries or countries that have a history of colonization, you know, there's a mixture of cultures that create the culture that's there today. It's not just one predominant one, right? It's just it's like a mix. So, but you have to look at the Arawak communities and the Arawak civilization because they were the ones that were there the longest out of all of us, right? So once we get into this, you're gonna understand a little bit more why Ayiti, or, you know, the different cultural aspects of Ayiti today, right? So this was the schedule that we had last week. So Monday, we covered the Arawaks and the Spanish invasion, and then Tuesday through Friday, we covered all of these other things, which are recorded. So again, I posted all of these recordings on YouTube, and I'll share my YouTube channel once again at the end of the presentation, so that you guys could get up to date with all of this other stuff. Because I'm actually putting together more programs, so so that we could keep the education going, we could keep the sharing and the information going, as we're kind of like stuck in quarantine, right? So of course, you know, I'm not doing this myself, but for those that don't know me, my name is Frantz Derenoncourt. That's me on the right side with the hat right there. Frantz Derenoncourt Jr. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Both my parents were born and raised in Ayiti. And, you know, pretty much my story is I was born and raised in New York. The educational system, I went to Catholic school, Catholic high school, Catholic, you know, elementary school, all the way up through high school and college. I didn't learn anything about Haiti and Haitian history. And my parents didn't really teach me that much about Haitian history either, because they were busy. You know, my mom worked 2-3 jobs. My father was a surgeon, cardiac surgeon. So he was always at work. So, I mean, everything that I kind of knew about Haiti is kind of self-taught through books. And this was recently, like within the last 10 years. So what I wanted to do was, as I was finding out all of this amazing information, I wanted to share it with others. So I started writing books, children's books about Haitian history that a lot of you have, you know, seen. But of course, I'm not doing this on my own. I have my co-host, a great friend of mine, who's right now currently in Haiti doing great work, my boy Dave. Dave, you there? Where's Dave at?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Can you
there
hear
you
me?
go.
All
All
right.
right, cool. So give the people a little background about yourself, brother.
Yeah, so I'm Dave, born and raised in Haiti and presently living in Haiti. But I spent a couple of years in the DC area, and that's where I met Frantz while I was working. So you'll hear roosters in the background. That's that's you know, living in Haiti. That's the situation. Yeah, well, I was working at the Haitian Embassy in DC as Director of Culture and Education, and you know, given Frantz passion for Haitian history and my passion for the subject as well, we just naturally became friends and collaborated a lot since, and continue to do so even since I've left DC to move back to Haiti.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Dave, that's my brother, and there's no one else I would rather do this program with. We kind of like cut from the same cloth, right? So, all right, so here's our subject for today, Haitian History 101, the Arawak Kingdom, Spanish Invasion. All right, so I like to start from the very beginning of things, right? I don't like to take for granted. I don't know everyone that's on this session today. So I'm not gonna take for granted that everyone knows exactly where Haiti is, right? In respect to different maps, large area maps. So of course you see this little pointer with the red dot right here. That is where Haiti is located. And if we take so sort of it's in the northern hemisphere, right? So it is part of I guess what they call North America, because the equator, which is this perforated line that you see going through here, that's what separates north and south. So, so here's Haiti right up there. And we take a closer look at the map. Haiti is part of the Greater Antilles, right? So the Greater Antilles consist of the larger land masses, the larger islands in the Caribbean. So you have like Cuba, Jamaica, the Ayiti, or Hispaniola, what they call it today, which is the island that consists of Haiti and Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. And then you have the Lesser Antilles, which is referred to like the smaller islands, sort of like, the Virgin Islands, St. Kitts, and Barbuda, places like that. So that's Haiti. Haiti kind of like sits right there in the center of the Greater Antilles. Now, prior to, we're talking about, this part of the session is prior to 1492. So if we start talking about Ayiti, pre-Columbian Ayiti, this is the Ayiti we're talking about, right? So Ayiti at the time was divided into 5 separate kingdoms, right? Chiefdoms. And this was it, right? It was over here. So if you take a look at prior to colonization, when the island was split into 2, right, with Dominican Republic and Haiti, it was one landmass. And you have Mayen up here in the north western part, and south of Mayen you have Jagua. In the center you have Maguana. In the northeast, where pretty much Dominican Republic is today, you have Magua. And in the southeast you have Igwe, right? And this was pretty much the island as the indigenous people lived in it, right? It wasn't just split in the center. It was the whole entire island. It was split into pretty much 5 kingdoms. And Dave, whenever you want to add something, just go right ahead.
Will do.
All right, brother. All right, so with the 5 kingdoms, then you had 5 chiefs, right? And chiefs and Ayiti were called caciques, right? So there were 5 kingdoms, and they had 5 at any given time. There were 5 caciques that were ruling those particular kingdoms. So if you go, I'm gonna go switch back and forth with the map. So if you're talking about Mayen over here in the northwest part of Ayiti, then you have Guacanacari, right, who is the cacique of that part of the territory. And then you have Caonabo. Caonabo was cacique of Maguana, which is right here in the middle. And then you have Anacaona. Anacaona was and these were the caciques at the time of Columbus's invasion, right? So like I said, there were many generations of caciques prior to this, but this was the recorded caciques during the Spanish invasion where Christopher Columbus landed. So Anacaona was cacique of Zagua, which is today like the south part of, well, pretty much the south part of Haiti. Zagua is sort of like where Leogan is.
Yeah, I would actually say that it's probably like, half of the country, probably, if you're looking at it.
Yeah.
It goes up there near the border with Marianne. You have the Artibonite department and part of the Centre department. You also have the West department where Port-au-Prince is, and all of the Southeast and South and East department. So pretty, it's pretty much the Cacica that, represents the majority of Haiti, when compared to the other regions. And Marianne is the other region that consists of some parts of modern day Haiti. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you have a little bit of Maguana that's in modern day Haiti as well too, but not too much of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So you had Anacaona. So Anacaona was caciques, if you will, Zagua, and Catubanama was cacique of Igwe, right here. And you have my little markers. What was it? Guanarex. I always have trouble pronouncing his name. What is it? Say it one more time. Warrionex, that's right. And he was cacique of Magua. So if you look at Magua and Igwe, those areas kind of like consist of what today is known as, modern day Dominican Republic. And then everything else, Maguana in the middle kind of consists of a little bit of both Haiti and Dominican Republic. And Mayen and Zagua is pretty much what Haiti is today. And these were the caciques at the time of Christopher Columbus's arrival. So Guacanacari, over that you see up there in the northwest, in the top left corner over here, when Columbus came, he was at the first settlement where he kind of landed, I think Guacanacari was the first cacique he made contact with. And they pretty much welcomed him. But we're going to get into Columbus and all that later. So I don't want to get into that. But these were the 5 caciques at the time. Now I want to get into sort of like the life of the Tainos, right? Like where did they live? How did they live? What did they eat? All the different types of things. They're pretty much their civilization prior to colonization or invasion. So here we have a picture of some of the houses that they used to live in, right? I think today we kind of call them jupas, but they call them bohios, right? And the common, I guess, like the chiefs, the caciques, lived in this one on the right here, kind of like a rectangular shape. You see it has like a little, porch area over here. And the rest of the people lived in the more circular ones, right? And most of these were made out of like palm leaves and straw and stuff like that. And they were actually really big. Like these pictures don't necessarily show the size of them, but in any one of these types of bohios, you could have like, 10 to 15 families living in them, right? So these were very large. That could hold, they say like about 10 to 15 men with their families, but it was more of a polygamous type of society they lived in. So one man could have maybe about 2 or 3 wives. So you could just think about the size of the families that lived in these things. And then the one that the chiefs lived in, the caciques, they were pretty large as well, but it would only be the cacique's family that would live in there. But the cacique would be able to have up to 30 wives and their children. So these were large as well.
Yeah, and name Frantz, I would also add that the island itself had multiple names, one of them being Boyo, and of course Ayiti as well, and Quisqueya. And these are all names that are recognized by both countries that currently. The name Quisqueya in particular is commonly used by both the DR and Haiti as well. And you have the top private university in Haiti is Quisqueya University. And you also have a top private high school here in Haiti that's also named Quisqueya.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And also what I'm going to may just make a quick announcement that please, as we're going through these presentations, we're just going to go through the presentation and then we're going to answer questions at the end. So as we're going through the presentation, just go through the chat and you could write the questions down in the chat room as we're talking. And then at the end of the presentation, then we're going to go back through the chat and try to answer everyone's question. All right, so that everyone gets their questions answered. All right, cool. So what would you find in a typical, Taino dwelling unit, or even outside of the dwelling unit? You see hammocks, right? Tainos, most of the time they would sleep on mats, made of like banana leaves or something that were on the ground. But a lot of times you'll see them in a lot of these houses, or even outside the houses, you will have a hammock. In fact, that was the word hammock comes from the Taino language. And so the hammocks that we use today is based off of the hammock that the Tainos invented. And they actually grew cotton up there. So a lot of these hammocks were made out of cotton or other types of materials. And so, Tainos, the way they lived was very simple, right? They had a lot of free time, right? The cacique's job pretty much was to kind of keep order and, make sure everyone had enough to eat and stuff like that. The planting seasons and the harvesting seasons and stuff like that. But other than that, I mean, they had, of course, they had their religious beliefs, but they had a lot of free time. So this hammock was one of their great inventions that we still use today. Also the canoe, right? Ayiti is an island, right? So there's water all around. Also, you have the river, Artibonite River, and one of their main modes of transportation was the canoe. And these canoes, this is a small one that you see here, but the canoes could hold anywhere between 10 to 15 people to up to 115, 150 people, depending on the size of the tree. So pretty much it's made out of a dugout tree trunk, right? And they would use it to fish. Sometimes they would go to different islands in the Caribbean. And, that was one of their inventions as well. In fact, a lot of the Tainos, they immigrated to the island of Ayiti from South America. And one of the ways they were able to get from South America to Ayiti was using a lot of these large canoes.
Yeah, I'll also add that one of the caciques, Caonabo, who was Anacaona's husband, he's actually believed to have been born in the Lucayan archipelago of the Bahamas. So he definitely used one of these canoes to arrive to Ayiti because he wasn't born on the island.
Absolutely. Okay, so also food was very important, right? So the Tainos were a very agricultural based civilization, although they did a lot of fishing, and there weren't a lot of large mammals to hunt on the land. Like there were no bison or, stuff like that that they eat. So they didn't really eat a whole lot of meat. They had like some small game, but they were really based on, agricultural. And one of the main parts of their diet was the Yuca plant, right? And that they would use to make cassava. So the Yuca plant, they would grow. I have a couple of illustrations over here of how like it's kind of developed. Like that's pretty much the Yuca, same Yuca that we see today. And they would take these Yucas and they would grind it down into like the pulp, and they would turn it into a bread, right? And the great thing about the cassava bread was that it would last. It wouldn't get moldy, right? So they would make these cassava breads, and that was sort of like the basis of their diet. Right? They grew a lot of other things, but the base that was that they grew a lot, that they had a lot of abundance of, was these yucca plants, so that they can make these the cassava bread, which is part of our culture today in Haiti, right? You see cassava, and not just in Haiti, all over the Caribbean, right? So that was one of the things that subsisted their communities the most. But also they had, of course, they grew a lot of other things like sweet potatoes. Corn was a major part of their diet as well. They call it maize. Also fishing. They use the technique of barbecue, right? In fact, that's a Taino, that comes from a Taino word, like a barbacoa, something like that. I can't remember how to pronounce it. But that's how they would cook a lot of their fish. They would eat some of their fish raw, but they would cook it as well, as far as like, and also other meats, right? They would cook small game meats, like I think they were like snakes and other types of small game, rodents and stuff like that. But they would barbecue them in a similar fashion that you see right here in this illustration. And over here in the illustration in the top left, this is sort of like you see like a little hut over here where they making the cassava bread, and they preparing soups and different things over here. Most of the agricultural duties were the women. The women were sort of like the master agriculture specialists, right? So they would like grow the yucca, harvest the yucca, and all the other agriculture, and then the men would mostly hunt and fish. Now, there are also a lot of symbols that they used, right? So over here is an illustration I found that showed a lot of their, like they did have a language, they communicated, right? But they also had, where you can see in Ayiti today, a lot of the petroglyphs, which with a lot of these symbols, right, which you could find in all the territories in the Greater Antilles and Lesser Antilles, around different caves and in rocks near streams and rivers. You'll see a lot of their symbols. I was fortunate to go to Ayiti in the north part in Limbe, where I was able to see a number of petroglyphs. So these were a lot of their symbols. In fact, I think I have, so these are like in different parts in the Caribbean, they're petroglyphs that they were on cave walls or on stones all over the Caribbean. And they would have symbols for a lot of different things, right? Yeah, you see the fertility, turtles. That's another thing that they used to hunt. They used to hunt turtles, birds. A lot of different birds were on the island, colorful birds. Some of them were domesticated, so they would have some birds as pets. A lot of them they would use to communicate. So they would train these birds to go to different parts of the island. Like if they had to warn like a different cacique about some type of encroaching enemy or something, they would train a lot of the birds to go across the island. And the other cacique would know that it was a sign. So they had a lot of different ways of communicating with these symbols. And also they had religious beliefs, right? Dave, I think last time you mentioned that they were more like a polytheist religious sect.
Yeah, definitely. They had a polytheistic belief system in which they revered different gods, and it wasn't a system in which they just had one central god, but different gods, as was the case in a number of different Amerindian communities.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. They had like a lot of these sculptures that they would make that would house their gods and the ancestral spirits, right? So they would make these are all like that you see on the screen right here. These are original from like 16th century, I believe, or early 16th century, late 15th century, where they would make these sculptures to house their deities, right? They're called Zemis or Semis. Especially the one that's very popular is the one on the bottom right over here. It's sort of like a triangular piece, and it has a face on one side. And you could see the detail in these things, right? So they took a lot of time to sculpt these Zemis because their belief system was very strong, especially when it came to the ancestors, right? They really revered their ancestral spirits, especially, of course, within their own family, but especially the caciques, right? The caciques from previous generations. They would, form these sculptures, and then their spirits would be housed, and they would pray to them. A lot of the priests in the village would use these sculptures, these Zemis, for guidance, right? And they're pretty much belief. Their main god was the water and food, right? So the god, I don't know which Zemi in particular it is, but I know one represented the god of food, which was like pretty much the Cassava or the Yuca, which is their main source, and also the water, which was another source of their survival. Now, they did have enemies, right? So, in fact, I think one of the main reasons why they left that South American region by canoe to seek out other lands was to flee their enemies. Their one enemy in particular were the Caribs, right? So the Caribs were, the Taino were a very peaceful people, right? I mean, they didn't really have a lot of, like the caciques' function was never necessarily to stop them from fighting, right? But they did have their main enemy, which were the Caribs, that used to pretty much raid their villages every so often, and like take the women. They pretty much just use the women for breeding. They would, you know, and they were known to be cannibals as well. So they had to develop weapons, right? The Tainos had to develop weapons, even though they were a peaceful people. One of their main weapons were the bow and arrow. Another one of their weapons was like a club that they would use to protect themselves and their villages with against the Caribs. And one of the stories that I heard why Guacanacari, which is the cacique from Mayen, invited, you know, the Europeans, the Spanish in, was part of it was protection against the Caribs. So they were always fighting back and forth with this tribe. Anacaona, not a lot of you have heard of Anacaona. If not, she was the caciquess of Zaragua, which was present day Leogan area was where she lived. And she was one, at the time of the Spanish invasion, she was the only woman cacique, female cacique. So, and you know, I learned a lot of this stuff from one of my mentors, Baina Bello. And she mentions that the balance of the 5 kingdoms, there always has to be, one of the kingdoms always has to have a woman cacique, right? So to provide balance within the whole kingdom, right? So it could be a ratio of 1-4, 2-3, you know, 3-2, whatever it is, but it couldn't be 4-5 women at a time. It couldn't be 5 men at a time. So to provide balance, you always had to have a woman cacique. And Anacaona's bloodline was a royal bloodline. The way the bloodlines worked in Taino culture was it came from the matriarchal side, right? So it's the mother's side that provides the royal bloodline. So Anacaona's grandmother was a cacique, and prior to that, you know, they had other women caciques in that royal bloodline. So at the time of the late 15th century, Anacaona was cacique of Zagua, and she had many talents as well. I mean, she was known to be to recite poetry. She's dance. She was very athletic as well, and the people really revered her, not just in her kingdom, but all over Ayiti, and even outside of Ayiti as well. They knew about her, and you know, her, not only her royal bloodline, but herself was well known all throughout the Greater Antilles.
Yeah, I would also add, Frantz, that Anacaona actually succeeded her brother Bohios as the cacique of Zaragua. So he was cacique before her, and then when he died, she succeeded him. And in addition to that, too, you mentioned her different talents. She was also a religious expert as well.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you mentioned also, Dave, that she was married to Caonabo. So once Caonabo and her were married, that was during her brother's, while her Anacaona's brother was cacique of Zagua. But once the brother died, she actually left the Maguana kingdom with Caonabo and went back to Zagua to become caciquess of Zagua after her brother's death. Okay, so now we get to the part of the Spanish invasion, right? So we pretty much have an idea of the Taino people, how they lived, and you know, just a very simple life, pretty much. They didn't believe in possessions. Everything that the land offered belonged to everybody, right? They didn't possess any type of jealousy and any traits like that. right? Revenge, anything. You know, they lived a very simple life. You know, the Caciques pretty much provided everything, all the order that they needed. And, you know, outside of the Caribs, there was never a threat to them. So this painting right here is actually an amazing painting. It's actually out of the book, which I just published, written by Baina Bello, Sheroes of the Haitian Revolution. And the painting was done by a great friend of mine, Kervin Andre. And it kind of gives an idea of like what's to come, right? So you have Anacaona, you know, she's watching these ships heading to her island, and you know what comes next. So we're going to go into the second part of this program, the Spanish invasion. Okay, so Christopher Columbus, right, commissioned by the Spanish monarchy to go find, you know, new lands and, you know, increase their kingdom, right? So I believe the story goes Christopher Columbus was initially looking for India, right? So I guess he gets lost at sea, you know, ends up in the Caribbean area, ends up in Ayiti, sees the indigenous population, thinks he's in India, and calls them Indians, right? So, but of course, the main mission of Columbus was to seek wealth, right? India was known for spices and stuff like that. But once he gets to Ayiti and sees this indigenous population, he notices that a lot of the chiefs, even some of the people that were not chiefs, they had a lot of gold medallions, gold, you know, earrings, nose rings and stuff. So that caught his interest. But upon his approach to Ayiti, his ship that he was on actually shipwrecked off the coast, off the shore. He got too close to the shore, and his ship shipwrecked, right? So the Tainos, before they even get off of the ship, the Europeans, Tainos see that these people are in trouble. They jump in the water, swim over to the ship to help Columbus salvage, you know, like a lot of the items that he brought over, to help the people get onto shore and all types of stuff, which kind of gives you an idea of how these people were, right? So they didn't look at these new visitors as a threat. Okay, they looked at them as like, oh man, these people are in trouble. Let's go give them a hand. Let's go help them. That's just the type of nature the Taino people had in themselves. So Columbus quickly notices that, okay, these people have something that I'm looking for, and they seem to be very peaceful, right? In fact, in one of his journals, he says that these people, Dave is way better at quotes than I am, but saying that, you know, they're so peaceful, you know, they're like a handful of us could, you know, enslave a whole population, something like that. So eventually, that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, and Columbus actually mentioned the fact that the natives, they're so fascinated by the swords that the Spaniards were carrying, and they would touch them and they would actually cut themselves because they weren't used to holding such weapons.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, like the Tainos, they pretty much had, they didn't have steel, right? Most of their weapons were made out of wood. Like the club I was talking about, the bow and arrows, they use stone for their arrow tips, right? Sometimes they put like poison on their arrow tips, but that was mostly to fight the Caribs, right? The Caribs didn't have this advanced weaponry as well, either. So Columbus came with steel and armor and all this stuff. So yeah, it was pretty much no match. But like I said, the gold was their main thing. And also this picture right here, I'm not sure if you're familiar with paintings by Jacob Lawrence. He's a very well-known painter, and he did a complete series on Toussaint Louverture. And this is one of the pictures, one of the paintings out of his series, where he has like a missionary and a conquistador, right? So the missionary is looking at the gold, that's the necklace that's on the woman. You see she has the gold earrings, gold necklace. And of course, the missionary is holding a crucifix. The conquistador has his, sword, he's holding the flag of, the Spanish flag. And their main mission was to extract, gold and pretty much rob the wealth of Ayiti. So once Columbus got there, in fact, they created a settlement in Ayiti. In fact, the first European settlement in the Americas was in Ayiti, right? In the north part of Ayiti. You see up here on the northwest, you have La Navidad. And so Columbus and the Spaniards, they built, it wasn't a lot of them. It was probably like about 50, it was less than 100 people in Columbus's group at the time of 1492 when he first landed there. So they decided to build a fort over here in the north part of Ayiti. And Columbus said, okay, well, we have this fort here. I'm gonna go back to Spain and come back with more people so that we could like really get busy over here. So, but prior to him leaving, of course, he renamed the island Hispaniola, right? Which stands for Little Spain. So that's where the island gets its name today, still, Hispaniola. And so they built this fort. He left about 30 Spanish people there to stay at the fort and kind of like start setting up shop until he comes back. And in fact, the reason the name of the fort is La Navidad is because it was completed around Christmas time, right? I think it was actually completed Christmas Day. So they named the fort La Navidad, right? And they even had like a whole Christmas dinner there with the Tainos. And, so the missionaries are doing their work to convert as many of the Tainos as possible. So there were missionaries there, but there were also Spanish soldiers there as well. That was part of Columbus's crew.
Yeah, I'll also add that the fort was actually built with the remains of the Santa Maria, which had actually shipwrecked once the Spaniards had arrived to Haiti.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that fort, that shipwreck off of the coast was the Santa Maria, right? So, he had the 3 ships, Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria. So it was the Santa Maria that actually crashed. And, they used that to build the fort.
Yeah, I would also add too that, although this was a Spanish expedition paid for by the Spanish crown, Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, Columbus himself was actually Italian from Genoa. So he was pretty much, an adventurer, an explorer looking for fame and fortune. And, Spain was able to financially support his voyage, but he wasn't actually a Spaniard.
Italian. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, trust me. I know that the Italians love them some Columbus. All right, so now the Fort La Navidad. So Columbus left, right? So he goes back to Spain to regroup and leaves those 30 people those 30 Spaniards at the fort. So the Spaniards at the time, they start getting real out of hand, right? They start attacking, well, not necessarily attacking, but they start trying to implement their authority on the Taino population, right? And they start, trying to get with the women, disrespecting the men, trying to enslave a small part of the population to go into mines and start, digging out gold. And the Taino Caciques were not amused with their actions, right? So a lot of the Caciques, including Caonabo, Cotupanama, Anacaona, supposedly was part of this raid, on the fort, right? Fort La Navidad. So they raid the fort, they burn it down to the ground, and they kill all 30 of the Spaniards, right? So now they're like, okay, so this guy, they know Columbus is coming back, right? And they just kill all of his crew and razed the fort. So Columbus comes back about a year later. And this time he comes back with hundreds of conquistadors, right? And the conquistadors, if you don't know, those are the ones that pretty much were part of the whole Spanish conquest of Latin America. And once they get there and they see that their comrades, they already came with the mindset that they're coming here to enslave the population and extract all the gold by any means necessary. So once Columbus comes back, he sees his fort is razed to the ground, burned down to the ground, and the Tainos are like, hey, listen, these guys are getting out of pocket. Conquistadors were not trying to hear any of it. They quickly imposed pretty much terror throughout the whole island, right? And quickly enslaved the population. They killed, at will. The most gruesome, the most gruesome things that you could talk about, like punishment and just crazy acts of violence that they imposed on this population. And they were killing them by the scores. They also brought back a lot of diseases from Europe, the conquistadors. So a lot of the population was devastated by all types of diseases, especially like smallpox and different things that decimated them. But also just the horrific treatment of the Taino people. Wholesale massacres and genocide was implemented on their population. And these were just like a few of the illustrations out of different history books of eyewitness accounts of what happened there. As you can see on the left, they imposed like quotas on the population, and if they didn't meet the quotas, they would, amputate body parts, chop off their hands, and stuff like that. They would just pretty much like other illustrations here. You see they're burning. Like if you look at the bottom right one, you see they have a cacique on a stake being burned, but you also see the priest, right, the missionaries, trying to convert them to Christianity, right, prior to them dying so that they can go to heaven, right? And the Tainos were just like, man, these guys are devils, right? If they're going to heaven also, then I don't want to go to heaven, right? So they're just inflicting the Europeans, the Spanish conquistadors are just inflicting their dominance and pretty much taking advantage of these people. And just to give you an idea of the population of the Tainos, no one really knows for sure how many Tainos were in Ayiti at the time of Columbus's first contact with them. Some say, I've heard everywhere between 500,000 to 2 or 3 million, but it's probably an average of that somewhere, maybe about 1 million, maybe 750,000 to 1 million. But pretty much by the end, 15, 20 years after Columbus first made contact, it was pretty much, like below 50,000. And most of that was because of the treatment, the slavery, and the disease that was put on the population by the Spanish. But also, a lot of times we feel like, based off the stories that we hear, we think that the Spanish conquistadors just came and ran over the whole island, which they did in the most part, but it wasn't without resistance, right? The caciques, most of them were kind of like, docile people, but they had a few that had enough experience dealing with the Caribs that we're not going to let these people just come and do whatever they want with us. So you had caciques like Kotubanara out of Igwe, Kotubanama out of Igwe, Caonabo and Maguana, even Anacaona put up a fierce resistance to the Spanish, right? So they put up a lot of different fights. Like I said, you see, I believe this is an illustration of Caonabo and Anacaona. You see Caonabo with his club, with a stone wrapped around it. You see his bow and arrow. So a lot of times, one of the ways that, and they put up a fierce resistance, like the Spanish, they couldn't just, there were some parts of the Tainos population that went up to the mountains to fight back, right? They pretty much marooned in their mountains, and that's how they were able to form in large groups and fight back against the Spanish. And Caonabo tried to mount a big resistance, so did Kotubanama. So once they could not subject the whole Taino population under their authority, and you still had large resistance, the Spanish sent a new governor, Ovando, Nicolas Ovando. And this person was especially cruel, right? So he came in to pretty much crush the rebellions. That was his main focus, because Anacaona still had a resistance as far as like in maybe two of the other caciques. And Ovando was sent in to crush them. And one of the things that he used, which you could just go back in history when you're talking about colonization, and one of the main weapons that the colonizer used it wasn't any of their weapons really. It was their deceit, right? It was their lies, right? It was their ruse. Like they would promise you one thing and do the exact opposite. They would promise peace, they would give you war, and they would do this to get you to lower your guard, right? That was their thing. Let's tell them that we're gonna bring peace, but then they do the exact opposites once your guard is lowered. And that's something that's happened all throughout our history, right? Where a lot of European colonists would come, promise one thing, sign a treaty, give their word with no plans of doing what they're going to say. So Ovando was pretty much a master of that. So that's exactly how Caonabo was captured, right? So Caonabo had a fierce resistance happening against the Spanish. So the Spanish came, they said, listen, we're gonna stop all the violence. The king of Spain is coming to Ayiti himself to meet with you, right? And so Caonabo was like, okay, well, I will only meet with the king. And his plan was to explain to the king that, his subjects are over here causing havoc on the island, right? We had a peaceful island. Now these people come and they're killing at will. They're doing anything they want to our people. And that's what Caonabo was pretty much going to state his case to the king. So one of the stories that I heard how they captured Caonabo was they approached him. The king wasn't there, but they said the king sent these as gifts for you, right? And they were pretty much chains with manacles on them. So they put the manacles right on his wrist and locked him up and had him in chains. And that's how he was captured, right? So there are a lot of different stories floating around, but that was one that I heard. And they captured him, and their plan was to send him to Spain. So they boarded him and his brother. His brother was Manicatex. So they captured him and his brother, boarded him on a Spanish ship, and they set out to Europe. But another story I heard was they broke out of their chains on the ship, attacked, the ship captains and the mates and whoever, sailors on there, and the ship shipwrecked. and the ship never made it to Spain. But there's a lot of different stories floating around, but it is known that Caonabo and his brother never made it alive to Spain. And also Anacaona, so again, same thing. She held out a fierce resistance to the Spanish, and they offered a peace treaty. They said, okay, listen, let's end these hostilities. Let's, have peace. And Anacaona agreed. She set up this big party, huge party to greet them. She had poetry, dancers, all different types of things. And they're sitting with these people. And so they invite them into one of the Bohios, right? The house over here, to have a meeting. So Anacaona, along with 50 other sub-chieftains, come into the meeting. And Ovando, who was the governor at the time, he gives a sign. I believe Ovando had a crucifix around his neck. And once he touched his crucifix, that was the sign to all the Spanish come out, leave the Tainos in there, lock them into the house, and set the house on fire, right? And then once they set the house on fire, every time someone tried to run out, like you kind of see this person's leg trying to get out of the fire, one of the Tainos, they would, stab them or shoot them or something like that. And they captured Anacaona alive, right? They offered her clemency, actually. So they said, like, if you were to convert to Christianity and take one of the governors as your husband to obey, then you can stay alive. And she refused, right? So after she refused, they strung her up and they hung her, right? So these were the people that, they were dealing with, right? So you can't take their word for anything. They had a one-track mind, was to just conquer the island, extract all the wealth from it, and move on to the next one. So, like I said, the Taino population in Ayiti was, let's just say for sake of argument, about 1 million people. By the time around 1514, like around 20 some odd years after Columbus set foot on the land, it was like about, I would say about 25,000, less than that. And then of course today, their population, I don't know how many full-blooded Tainos are out there in the world, but it's not a lot, right? And most of that is because of the Spanish conquest of their territories.
But there definitely are no full-blood Tainos left in Haiti, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Outside of the island.
So now all of these atrocities happening, in Ayiti. You have this one guy now, Bartolomé de Las Casas, right? So he comes, I believe he first goes to Cuba, right? Like in the early 16th century. And then eventually makes his way to Ayiti, where he's actually the first priest that he turned into a priest. I think he got to the Americas when he was like 18 years old or something. And then he was ordained a priest in the Americas. So he's like the first European ordained as a priest in the Americas. And then he made it his mission to try to save the indigenous population of the Indies. So he started writing these detailed accounts with the mission to send it to the monarchy, the king and queen in Spain, to try to help these people out, right? So he started writing eyewitness accounts of the treatment of the Spanish conquistadors on the Taino population. And this book right here is pretty much the book. I mean, I think this book was published in the early 16th century, like 1530, something like that. But it's still in publication today, right? It's still being printed today. And I mean, I haven't read the whole book because it's just his detailed accounts are very disturbing, right? Of how the Spanish treated the indigenous population, the children, the women, as well as the men. So he started writing and trying to, let them know that this needs to stop, right? But in his writings, he also suggested that, the Taino are not built for what you need them to do. Like the Spanish were trying to enslave the population, but they're not used to that hard work. I mean, these are the people that invented the hammock, right? They're just not built to dig out gold in mines and slave on plantations. They would just die from the work, and very minimal work at that. They weren't able to accomplish. So it was Bartolomé de Las Casas that suggested that they bring in enslaved Africans to the Americas to do the work, because he felt that the Africans were more suited for the type of labor that the Spanish wanted them to do in the New World. So that's exactly what they did, right? So they joined, the Queen and the King, they sanctioned the transatlantic slave trade. And I believe the first Africans that came into the New World was like early 16th century, like 1503 was when the first enslaved African came into Ayiti and enslaved by the Spanish. And, that's pretty much, the rest is history. What happens after that. But it was really Bartolomé de Las Casas that made that first suggestion that led to the first African arriving in Ayiti in 1503. So now we get to, pretty much after, the late mid 16th century, like mid 1500s, the Spanish, then they start pretty much expanding their territory all throughout Latin America, right? And they extract all that they could out of Hispaniola or Ayiti. And, they started moving on to different islands, South America, Mexico, a lot of different other places. But there was still resistance happening as well. So the resistance efforts, I believe the last cacique to die was Catubanama in Igwe, right? Like Catubanama actually had a deal with the Spanish, like, because the Spanish realized that cassava bread was very valuable for them, right? Because the bread that they brought in from Europe, it would mold very quickly, but the cassava bread would not mold. It was very durable, and they could use it as a main source of food as they're going throughout the rest of the Americas. So Catubanama actually had a deal where he would provide tribute to the Spanish if they would leave, his tribe alone over in Igwe. And but there was a incident that happened that where one of the sub-chieftains under Catubanama was viciously killed, like by Spanish dogs or something, because the Spanish introduced a lot of different animals to Ayiti at the time, like horses, pigs, dogs, all different types of things. And one of Catubanama's chieftains was killed by dogs, and Catubanama responded by killing about 7 to 10 Spanish people, and that caused a whole war between Catubanama and the Spanish. And they eventually captured Catubanama, executed him, and that was the last of the original caciques that died. But the second generation of resistance actually started with this guy that you see on your screen right now, Cacique Henry. Right? Henry was actually also a relative of Anacaona, actually Anacaona's nephew. So Anacaona's brother had children, and Cacique Henry was one of them. And so Cacique Henry led one of the major resistance efforts, like a second generation, because this is sort of like more 1530s era. And Cacique Henry had an area in the mountains that was impenetrable pretty much. Spanish couldn't get him. He was a fierce warrior, inflicted a lot of damage on the Spanish, and they ended up having to have a treaty with Cacique Henry, which actually is the first recorded treaty in the Americas between Europeans and the indigenous people, was with Cacique Henry and Ayiti. So Cacique Henry, he has this treaty. He actually lasts a long time. I don't remember his fate at the end, but you know, he was able to have his whole, you know, tribe, his people, his followers safe for the most part from Spanish conquistadors. And he was pretty much sort of like the last living resistance fighter, him and his crew, notable resistance fighter, I should say, against the Spanish conquistadors. And I think Cacique Henry is known, very well known on both sides of the island. Is that correct, Dave?
Yeah, exactly. And there's actually a school, a high school named in his honor here in Haiti, in Port-au-Prince. And there's a saltwater lake in the Dominican province of Bauruco, which bears his name, Lago Enriquillo being his translation of his name in Spanish, Little Henry.
That's right. Absolutely. So yeah, he's revered on both sides of the island, Dominican Republic, and in fact, this statue is on the Dominican Republic side, I believe. Right. All right, that's the end of the presentation, guys. So thank you so much. We're gonna do questions coming up. So I'm gonna go in the chat room. Hopefully you flooded it with questions, because Dave and I are gonna go ahead and do our best to get answers to you. But I just wanted to share with y'all the next parts, the next 4 sessions of the Haitian History 101, which is on my YouTube channel. So I have a whole playlist just dedicated for it. So I'm going to share that in the chat room if you guys are interested, and you could go take a look at the next 4 sessions. I'm going to put that in the chat room. And also, this presentation is sponsored, obviously, by Thoroughbred Books, which is my publication company. Like I said earlier, I wrote a few books about Haitian history, 4 of them to be exact. Well, 3 I wrote, and Sheroes of the Haitian Revolution, written by Bayina Bello, I published. So that's out right now. But whoever is interested, please feel free to take a look at my website, thoroughbredbooks.com. It's great information for kids and for adults, right? If you want to brush up on your Haitian history. So for sure, take a look at that and, you know, support, right? And get some great information, have some great books in your library. And also, my co-host, my friend Dave, also has some great efforts that he's doing.
Yeah, so in addition to the organization that I run, the nonprofit Basketball to Uplift the Youth, which uses the sport of basketball as a tool to mentor and educate Haitian youth. I also have my own production company, which works on doing multimedia projects to positively influence Haitians here in Haiti, and also to change the narrative about Haiti on a global level. So if you're interested in any of these initiatives, you can definitely reach out to.
Absolutely, absolutely.
My email right
Great. Indeed, yeah, Dave is doing some great things in Ayiti. Dave, when you get a chance, share your websites on the chat room.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now as we speak.
All right, perfect. All right, guys, so we're gonna go back into the chat, and then I'm going to start taking some questions. So I know in the beginning, it was kind of tough, so let's see. Okay, we hear you, okay. So let's see, but we hear someone else. I don't know. We wanna see that painting. Which painting? You want to see that painting? Oh, are you talking about the painting that's in my office? That's let me see. Let me see if I could put some video up on here. Let's see. Let's see. Can y'all see? Oh, here I am. Yeah, this painting is a dope painting. This is actually the cover. This was done by my brother, Kervin Andre. Big shout out. That's the cover of one of my books. Boukman and Cecile Fatima, Black Revolution. So that's Cecile Fatima and Boukman right there. So it's a concept that we both came up with. And I wanted some original artwork on my next book. Like most of my other books are graphic artists, like done on the computer. But I mean, Kervin is such a talented artist. I wanted to do something with him. So not only did I commission him to do my book cover, but I also bought the painting on him because it was crazy dope. So yeah, that's my baby. You know, that's in my office right now.
Yeah, Kervin's a dope artist. And actually, the picture, the poster you had given me, Frantz, was just delivered to me in Haiti yesterday.
Oh, for real? Nice. Very nice.
Let me show it to you here. It's delivered here.
Very dope. Very dope. Yes, indeed. You got that on your birthday, I believe.
Yeah, that was my gift, man. Much appreciated.
Very dope. All right, cool. Let's see. Let's get back to the questions. All right, let's see. Yes, yeah, okay. We're ready to begin. Happy you're back. All right, everyone mute yourselves. All right, great. Thank you. Muted. You can go on mute. Will this be recorded? Yes. So this is. Let me make sure it's recorded because that would be crazy. Recorded. Okay. All right. So yeah. So this session was recorded. So whoever RSVP'd, I'm gonna send out the. Well, actually, no. It's gonna be on YouTube. I'm gonna upload this onto YouTube, and then I'm gonna send out the YouTube link again to everyone who RSVP'd, so that you have that link and you can just watch it on YouTube. So I'll let everyone know when that happens. Let's see. Sunset no, yes, thank you, very helpful. What's your name again? Blah blah. Can you please scroll up? We can't see the whole map. I don't think I had the whole map in place. It was just kind of like parts of the map. So let's see. Zagua, they never use the letter J. Yeah, different people spell it different ways. I've seen it with the X. I've seen it with the J. I've seen it, a lot of different ways. So that was just one map that I used that had it spelled a different way. She was powerful.
Yeah, in terms of that, Frantz, I think, people on the Dominican Republic side use the J because that's the sound that the X has in Spanish. So I think that's where that difference comes. It's pronounced a certain way, and then people, because it was originally, the name itself is from the Arawak language, right? And they didn't have a script like we do, so
right.
They pretty much wrote it how it sounded, and and Spanish and other languages. So that's where that difference comes from.
Cool, that makes sense. All right, cool, very good. Bichio was her brother. That's right. Yeah, he was the main chief of the whole Zaga. That's correct. All right, let's see. Dang, they seem big. I want one. How do you spell that? I'm not quite sure. They seem big. I want one. How do you spell that? Not sure what that was. Oh, the Bohios. Okay, yeah, the Bohios were big. Yeah, they were big. They housed a lot of families, right? It wasn't just like each family gets their own Bohio. I mean, it was like a village, like almost. And there would be some of them would have like about 150 people living in these Bohios. And it would be surrounded, like you have multiple Bohios in the village surrounding the common area where they would have like a lot of their religious ceremonies. They would play a lot of their games. They have sort of had like it's this game I used to play in California. I don't know what the name is in Haiti. It's kind of like hacky sack, where you kind of have like a little bean bag and you just kind of have to keep it up, like without touching your hands. Like you use your feet, your arm, your shoulders, your head, or whatever. And the object of the game is so it won't touch the ground. So they had like little games like that they would use with, they'd use the ball, like tree gum and, some palm stuff. And that's one of the games that they would play in the courtyard. Bichio is king of Wakani in the west till 1500. His capital was Zagua. Yep. Quisqueya. Yep. When did the language develop? The Arawak language. The Taino language is part of the broader group, the Arawak group, right? So I know the Arawak the Arawak language developed. I think they have a more developed language than the Taino, but it's sort of like almost the Taino language is part of the Arawak language. Do you know anything about that, Dave?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when that language was developed because, as we had mentioned, they had come from South America. But what we do know is that the Taino language itself sort of evolved once they got to the island, once they got to Ayiti around the year 1200. And there were a couple different dialects on the island from that main language.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's see. Did the kingdom's people build long houses like Native Americans? Some of the caciques' houses were a little bit longer than others, but not very long. Some of the courtyards were different shapes. Like some of them were very long and narrow, where the Bohios houses, the housing dwellings, would surround it. So like where they would have their religious ceremonies, some of them were wide, some of them were narrow, but very long. But I think the houses were pretty much uniform. Some of them were bigger than others. Like some of them would hold more families than others. But I think the shape was pretty much uniform throughout the island. Let's see. Thanks for that info. Let's see. Out of 234 words collected, many it will be perceived are hardly comparable, being names of particular animal and plants, about 200 offer comparison. Spaniards borrowed many Haitian words. Yeah, tobacco, pimiento. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different Taino words that we still use today. Like even hurricane. Hurricane is a Taino word. Hurricane, like I mentioned, hammock is one. The canoe, that's a Taino word. So yeah, a lot of like I said, like their civilization and the things that they did, it still felt in Ayiti, and not only in Ayiti, throughout the whole Caribbean where they once dwelled, right? There's still a lot of their culture and practice that you see today. A lot of that is from the time of the Taino people. Let's see, the Caribs were cannibals. Yeah, it's said, it's widely known that the Caribs were cannibals. So they used to raid a lot of the Taino villages. And I'm not sure, they said a group of them actually were on that mainland of Ayiti, like mostly on the northeast side of Ayiti. But yeah, they would have to form, a lot of resistance because they would make war on, the Tainos a lot. And they would pretty much like, once they captured them, the ones that they had in captivity, they would, like, of course, they'll use the women to breed, right? So that they can continue their bloodlines or whatever. But they would fatten up the children so that they, that's gruesome. I don't want to talk about that. But the Caribs were cannibals, yes. Let's see, she was a poet, absolutely. Anacaona was a poet. She inspired many with her poetry. Let's see, he said that already at Pierre. Caonabo might be from Yucatan. Caonabo as a latecomer, Mayobanex king, name of their last king, means Mayhead. Okay, all right, Pierre.
Hello?
Yes.
Did they build long houses like the Native Americans?
Yeah, I saw that question. I answered it a little bit, but no, I don't think so. I think most of their houses were that round shape or that rectangle shape, like the illustration that I had. Those are the majority of their homes. I'm not sure if that I'm not sure of the long house that you're mentioning in the Native Americans, maybe more in North America. But in the islands, they kind of made the houses especially for their climate, right? And also the materials that were available to them. So the round shape was more was more susceptible for them. It was easier for them to manage. And you know, every different area, they would practice things differently based off their environment, right? So, you know, probably the longer houses and the Native Americans used in North America probably were better for their environment than it was in Ayiti, if that makes sense. All right, let's see.
Were they bigger than usual houses? Like the thing? Were they bigger than like usual houses that regular humans live in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Like a lot of them would house like 100 people, like 150 people would live in these houses,
So it'd
right?
be like a big mansion. So it'd be like a mansion.
Well, I wouldn't say I wouldn't use the word mansion.
Yeah, like
But
a big.
like they didn't really have a lot of things inside of them, right? Like they would have mats, maybe like a little area where, you know, someone would have a hammock or something like that, but mostly just to be there because I think they had like other little huts where they would do their cooking, right? So I'm not sure if they had kitchens and stuff like that in there or individual bedrooms and stuff. Like remember, these are very simple people, right? So like a lot of the luxuries and stuff that we're used to, they didn't even consider, right? They just needed something for shelter that could keep their family safe and where they could sleep, right? So that's pretty much how it worked out for them. Let's see, man, should have let them drown. Yeah, you're right about that. You should have let them drown. All right, let's see. Columbus came with the sellout on the ship, which were the Moors. Yeah, there were two. I did read about that. Like part of his crew, there were two black people that was part of his crew. I think that was Columbus that I read about that had two black people on his crew, but I'm not 100% sure. All right, let's see. Does anyone know exactly where Columbus landed in Leogan? No, he didn't land in Leogan. He actually landed closer to the Mont Saint Nicolas, like in the northwest tip of Haiti, in that area, like the north of Haiti. Like, so the first settlement, if you remember the map, let me see if I could go back in the map. Yeah, so the first settlement was up here in the north with La Navidad. So Columbus was said, because the first chief, the first cacique that he made contact with was Guacanacari, who is the chief of, am I going the right way? I'm going the wrong way. Guacanacari was the chief of Marienne, cacique of Marienne. So Columbus landed like around here. And then the first settlement was around here, right? And Guacanacari was the cacique of Mayenne. So Columbus landed in Mayenne area. So Zaragua, Leogan is over here in the south part. All right, let's see. Does anyone know? Okay, he landed in the north of Haiti, yes, okay. Let's see, in the beginning, he said Columbus first made contact with Guacanacari. That's right, yeah. We should never use the name Hispaniola. Yeah, I never use Hispaniola to represent Haiti, for sure. Ayiti. Ayiti, when you hear people say Ayiti, like in Haiti, they never refer to the island as Haiti, right? It's always Ayiti, right? Of course, you know, it means that part. I believe that they're talking about that part of the island, but the whole island is Ayiti, right? If we call the island Hispaniola, then we're acknowledging, you know, the colonization of the Spanish, right? Whenever we call that island Hispaniola, if you want to call the island the indigenous name, with the people that live there called it, then it's Ayiti. That's the name of it. All right, let's see. I'm reading a historical novel right now that describes a lot of what Frantz is saying. It's called Haiti by Curtis Sunday. The book suggests that Queen Isabella did not want the natives enslaved. Is this true? I believe Queen Isabella, Dave touched on this a little bit, but Queen Isabella, I believe she wanted them to be converted to Christianity. I believe that was her main thing, so that if they converted the natives to Christianity, then I forget what the function of it was for her to Dave knows more about that stuff. Dave, you still there?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, Isabella was a devout Catholic, and her, her name was actually Isabel the Catholic. Because she was so devout in her faith, and she definitely wanted the natives to be converted to Catholicism, and actually after the native population died. And they started bringing enslaved Africans to the island, they would actually have them go through Iberia, which consists of Spain and Portugal. They would have them come to that area first and have them be converted before they actually get to the New World. And this would take much longer than having them go directly from Africa to the island, right? And so it was with Isabella's grandson, I believe, Emperor Charles V, that they actually, allowed for transfer of enslaved Africans straight from Africa to the New World.
Yeah, absolutely. But they ditched that real quick because it was holding up the whole plantation process. So, all right, let's see. Because Columbus named it, let's see. We don't use the name anymore, as this will include DR as part of Hispaniola. Columbus was a very wicked evildoer. I agree. Caonabo started killing Columbus people because they was violate the people in the island from the beginning. Yeah, I wonder where they had time to build the first school in the island. 1516 was that war lost. Universidad. All right, good stuff, Pierre. I gotta get Pierre on here for the next one. Let's see. There's a song on that. Caonabo mun e prisona Isabella. Yep. Conquer and divide, always. That's their motto to this day. Funny, it's still the same way now with governments and those in charge, cutting their hands if they refused. Is it because of Casas writings that we know the history of the natives in Haiti? Not necessarily. He had a lot of the activities of the conquistadors were recorded by Las Casas, because I don't believe that's his only book. He has 3 other books in regards to his time in the West Indies.
Yeah, and not only that, Columbus kept a journal, and other folks who came to the island also journals that provide a lot of the information that we now have today about the Taino population.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was gonna get to. Like Columbus kept a lot of a detailed journal, which gave us a lot of view about their time there. This is crazy, man. Thank you for hosting this class. You're welcome. No, that's it. This was amazing. I could listen to you all day. Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, I could talk about this all day, for real, for real. I wish I could do the whole thing all over again, but it's recorded. So definitely go to YouTube and check out the next sessions, because we had just as much a good time with those as we did with this one. Okay, is this recorded somewhere so that I can share with my oldest child who is currently doing chemistry remotely? Yeah, so as soon as we're done with this recording, I'm gonna upload it to YouTube, and I'm gonna send a message to everyone to let you know that it's recorded, also with the link, so that you could definitely check it out. That was very intense. Yeah, intense. I've read thoughts. They were really good. Okay, thanks so much. Yes, this was phenomenal. Can't wait to check out the other parts. Thank you. I'm going to share the YouTube page. I shared the link again, so definitely check out the YouTube page. I'm also going to email it out to everybody. Thank you, guys. This was awesome. Wow, that was great. Thank you. Merci en pile, monsieur. And kind of dark. It was kind of dark. I mean, to be honest, this isn't a glorious time in history, the colonization of the Americas. It was a pretty dark time in history. I mean, the European colonizers, they were evil. There were some pretty evil people. So they completely destroyed a civilization, right? A thriving civilization. And it's kind of hard to be a little I want to give the true accounts of what happened. You know, I don't want to kind of like downplay it, you know, because they really like, it was a genocide, right? There's no way about it. It's sort of like trying to downplay, you know, the Holocaust or, you know, African slavery. You know, it's just, there's no way to do it. You just have to give it the truth, right? Hi, thanks. This was amazing. You're welcome. Dave, yeah, everyone reach out to Dave. Dave is doing some great things in Ayiti. He has his organization that's doing some great things. So definitely support Dave in everything that he's doing. All right, let's see. Was intermarriage a thing, or did the conquistadors just rape? They pretty much just raped. You know, they didn't care. I mean, you always have, there's always a story out there, like some type of Pocahontas type story where, you know, she married one of the colonizers and tried to make peace with everybody. But, you know, those are pretty far in between. You know, like they came, the Spanish conquistadors, they came out there with one mission, and that was to extract the wealth out of the country by any means necessary. And terror was one of those means. So talk about terrorists, right? So why did they want gold? They could have got silver. It wasn't limited to gold. They took all the wealth out of the country. I believe silver was part of that as well, right? So they were mining for gold. That also, I believe they also had silver mines. Let's see, this information is so powerful and great for our Haitian children so they can know that they came from the grave. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to pass on this information to the next generation, trying to make it easier for them to access this information. Because when I was young, I didn't know any of this stuff, right? That's kind of like part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today, right? It's kind of like I want the next generation to know exactly, you know, the real history, right? They're not going to find anything about Ayiti in their history books in elementary school, middle school, even high school, right? So this is world history, right? Especially when you're talking about Haiti and their and what they did in world history with the Haitian Revolution and being the first independent Black state in the Western Hemisphere. So, but in order to get to truly understand why Haiti is the way it is today, then you have to go back into history. And there's no way you could go back into the history of Haiti without talking about the Taino. All right, let's see, is this recorded? Yes, it's recorded. Greatness, amazing. Does he sell that painting? Well, that painting is mine, so you can't have that one. But he has a lot of dope artwork. So definitely check out on Instagram, go to A Comics Art. I'm gonna type it in the chat. A Comics Art on Instagram. You can check him out. I'm not sure if his website's name. It might be acomics.com or something like that. acomicsart.com. But A Comics Art, he's the guy that does all the paintings. All right, a few more questions. Wow, spelling, painting. I want that painting. That's beautiful. I can't spell. You mentioned that at least one of the Caciques must be a woman. Who was the female Cacique before Anacaona? I mean, before her brother died and she took over. I know Anacaona's grandmother was Cacique Zagua. I'm not sure if she was the Cacique at the time before her brother. I'm not 100% certain. I don't think so. I think there was someone else in there. There's also another good book written by Edridge Danticat called Golden Flower. That's where she gives a lot of good information about Taino life prior to colonization as well. I'll put my camera on real quick. I can show this to you. This book right here is pretty good. Anacaona Golden Flower. Where you see the date she has on there, Haiti, 1490. So this is prior to colonization. Columbus didn't get there until 1492, right? So she gives a lot of different information. In fact, a lot of what I know is from this book, right? Written by Edridge Danticat. So check this one out. It's a great read also. Edward Zanticat, one of my favorite authors. I got a bunch of her books over there. So definitely check out Golden Flower, written by Edward Zanticat. Let's see. Goodbye, everyone. Stay safe. Let's continue. Absolutely. There's a street in Port-au-Prince with your last name. Any ties? Yeah. Derenoncourt. A lot of people know about the Derenoncourt in Haiti. You know, so you know, the Derenoncourt I mentioned in one of the sessions that Derenoncourt was on the Haitian Declaration of Independence. One of the signatories is Derenoncourt. So yeah, I'm sure there's some ties with my name in there. I heard of the Taino Indians that were throughout the Caribbean, but I think you mentioned another type of Indian. How many kinds of Indians were in Haiti? I believe the Taino were the dominant race of the Arawak, tribe of the Arawak that was in Haiti, or Ayiti at the time. There were some Caribs on the island as well, but not a large number on the northeast part, sort of like on the Dominican Republic side part. There was a small population of Caribs. But I think it was just mostly the Tainos and the Caribs that inhabited the island of Ayiti. There's a street in Port-au-Prince with your last name. Okay, I read that already. Thanks again for your time and your passion. You're welcome. Should we really not acknowledge the name Hispaniola? Is it true that the Spaniards colonized the island? I don't believe we should ignore history that actually happened. Well, I mean, Christopher Columbus, the name of the island is Ayiti, right? When Christopher Columbus came to colonize the island, he renamed it Hispaniola. So it's your decision, right? If you want to, you know, go by the name Hispaniola, or if you want to go by Ayiti. As long as you know the facts of what happened, then, you know, you can make your choice of how you want to refer to the island. Let's see. The difficult part about documenting the killings was that it wasn't as simple as sending an email, getting the information back to Spain by ship. It took many days at sea. Plus, there was great financial interest on the island. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. I have my kids listening in so that they can learn a bit more about history. Keep teaching and motivating, please, people, in unique ways to teach our history. We need a part 2 and 3. Well, we have part 2 and 3. It's on YouTube. Definitely check it out. All right, thanks for answering our questions. When you wrote your books, what resources did you use? I used a lot of resources, man. I read dozens of books. In fact, if you get my first book, Haiti, the First Black Republic, I have a reference guide and a bunch of different books that I used. But and I also went to Haiti. I went to Haiti. I spoke with a lot of different storytellers, griots, you know, that kind of house the stories. Because one of the things that you have to realize when you're reading about the stories, you have to understand who the author is that's telling those stories, right? Because a lot of times they tell the story from their point of view, right? So depending on who the author is, if it's not an academic, you know, factual account of different things that happened throughout history, then a lot of times the author puts their view, and a lot of times, more times than none, that author is from European descent, right? So you have to really be careful where you get your information from. You know, you can't rely on one source. You have to have many different sources. So yeah, I've gone to Haiti, talked to a lot of historians there. I have a wide variety of books, a few hard to find books. So you could actually contact me offline and I could share that with you. All right, so how do you spell those house? How do you spell those houses? What is your YouTube page name again? Let's see, where do we find your children's books? Are you on Amazon? I am on Amazon. Right now, Amazon, my selection on Amazon is very low. Like they have very low inventory right now because they're not allowing me to send more books because they're pretty much shutting down everyone sending non-essential items to Amazon, since I guess everyone's ordering toilet paper and medicines and all different types of things. So I can't send more books there. So if you want books, you can actually go to my website and order the books. I'm gonna put it on the chat room right now. Let's see. Where do we find, I'll put my, it's thoroughbredbooks.com, thoroughbredbooks@gmail. That's my email. So you could definitely be, where do you find your chosen book from? I would like to get a book list from you. No problem, Diana. Just contact me offline. All right, everybody, I think that's it. So thank you so much. Appreciate you guys logging on. And so we're just doing this. This is the last part of Haitian 101, Haitian History 101. It's a 5-part series. So I'm more than likely gonna do another series, a different series from what we covered today, because I don't want to keep on talking about the same thing. There's a whole bunch of different things we could talk about, like African spirituality, voodoo, the relationship between Haiti and the United States, a lot of different things that we could talk about. So I'm gonna keep the education going, and you hear from us, man. So if you RSVP'd for this, then you'll get an email once we get our next program up and running. All right, so thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Dave, you still there?
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Go ahead. So thank you again, brother. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you sharing your knowledge. And man, hopefully we get to see each other soon again, bro.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. Thanks for the invite, bro.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. So thanks again, and be safe out there. You know, it's getting kind of crazy out there. I don't know if we're at the end. I don't know if we're in the middle. I don't know if we're still in the beginning. But you know, everybody just stay safe. Keep your family safe, and you know, wash your hands. It feels like that's the most that we could do right now. So wash your hands and just be conscious of everyone, and we'll get through this eventually. All right. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you guys soon. All right. Peace.